If I had to pick one word to describe this season, it would probably be hell. Because this is truly the season from hell. Whether it was Jimmy Butler demanding a trade, a 10-game losing streak, the countless heartbreaking losses that included not one, not two, not three, but 4 game-winning buzzer beaters versus the Miami Heat that just left all of us speechless and in despair. And now the Miami Heat sit here without their own first-round pick because they decided to make the playoffs. And as things stand right now, they just got their ass kicked in Game 1 against the Cleveland Cavaliers, but it remains to be seen how the rest of that series will go because I still got Heat in 6, baby. But just when we thought things couldn't get worse, they did, because we all know the Miami Heat have the Golden State Warriors draft pick, which was going to land somewhere between 18 and 20. And, well, there was a lottery on Monday to determine that order. And because the Heat have the worst luck that I've ever seen, that pick fell at 20th. And the reason for that whole thing is because the Warriors, the Grizzlies, and the Milwaukee Bucks all finished the regular season with the exact same record, so they had to determine via lottery who would get 18, who would get 19, and who would get number 20. And of course, that Warriors pick fell all the way to 20. And as Barry Jackson... But before we get into that, I just noticed we're only 17 subs away from 7K, and how dope would it be if this video got me there? So if y'all could, please hit the button. The support is greatly appreciated. Let's get back into it. Points out, this century, there has only been one All-Star picked at 20th overall, and that was Jameer Nelson, although there was some other good players like Jalen Johnson, Karis LeVert, Evan Fournier, who is probably the random scrub Heat killer GOAT, and also Brendan Hayward are just some guys. So if you want a full explanation of the Heat's current draft pick situation and kind of how we got here, you can check out my video from a couple of days ago, but Barry Jackson does a nice job recapping it here, where he points out that in this year's draft in June, the OKC Thunder will get the Miami Heat's pick, which will be number 15, and the Heat don't actually have a second-round pick. It would have been 41st overall, but that's going to go to the Golden State Warriors via Brooklyn and via Indiana. But fortunately, the Heat do have their own pick in 2026, while the 2027 pick will go to the Charlotte Hornets, unless the Heat miss the playoffs that season, because that pick will also be lottery protected. Now let's look at the updated Tankathon standings, just so you can kind of get an idea of where everything officially stands. The one thing I want to point out is the Dallas Mavericks pick 11, and that's where the Heat would have picked had they missed the playoffs. So God forbid the Mavericks win the lottery, because that would have been the Miami Heat. So just keep that in mind and pray that doesn't happen. But other than that, just outside the lottery, you can see at number 15 is technically the Miami Heat's pick, which will go to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then because of the results of Monday's small lottery, the Grizzlies will pick 18, Milwaukee at 19, and then that Warriors pick is at 20, which goes to the Miami Heat. So what I want to do in today's video is actually look at a couple of mock drafts. We looked at 5 major publications, and we're going to talk about who they have going at number 20 overall in each of these. Now, they're not all updated to show the Heat with that 20th pick, but we'll still get an idea of some of the guys that will be in that range. Now, usually when we look at these rookies, we use the Ringer's website, but because the Ringer is founded by that Celtics-loving bum Bill Simmons, we're not going to use them today. We're going to use Yahoo Sports, so shout out to them. And I also want to say, I'm going to be showing videos of all of these prospects while I talk. So if you're on the audio side of things, because yes, I take these YouTube videos and put them on multiple podcast platforms, maybe come over to the YouTube, watch the video, and subscribe while you're here. It's greatly appreciated. That being said, the first publication we're going to look at is Yahoo Sports, and they have our guy Danny Wolf going number 20th overall, a guy that Heat fans are pretty familiar with for the most part. He's a guy that I've talked about a few times, and he certainly has me excited because he is 7 feet tall, 250 pounds, only 20 years old, coming out of Michigan, and he has just such great versatility with his game. I've heard him be called Baby Jokic, which really gets me excited. Now, the 2 player comps that Yahoo has for him is Kelly Olynyk and Frank Kaminsky, which doesn't get me as excited. But then I kind of realized there's low-key a fine line between Kelly Olynyk and Nikola Jokic, because, like, if you wanted to make a Kelly Olynyk highlight tape, which how boring does your life have to be to make a Kelly Olynyk mixtape? But if your life is that boring and you do it, you could probably make a mixtape that looks Kelly Olynyk look like a Hall of Famer because he's had some nice dunks, some great passes, some great dribble moves. And I understand that looking at anybody's highlight tape will make you look really good. But I have watched a lot of Danny Wolf film, and at the end of the day, what you can't fake is that he has a lot of skill, particularly for his size. If you look at his strengths here, according to Yahoo, they have shot creation, cutting, hustle, all things that certainly define Heat culture, I guess you could say. And if you're watching these highlights and saying, damn, how the hell is a 7-foot big man with skill and vision like that projected to go in the 20s? Well, that's because of his concerns, which Yahoo Sports lists as shooting, athleticism, and turnovers. I kind of want to point out the shooting thing for a second because if you look at his stats, he shot 33% from 3 this year on 3 attempts, which is not great, but you would hope that there's some potential there just because his form doesn't look all that bad. But then if you look at his free throw numbers from this season, he was at 59% on 3 attempts, and that part does scare me. Now, he's actually shot 72% last year, also on 3 attempts, so not a lot of volume there. I just don't like to see his free throw percentage getting slightly worse. And we should also point out he was at Michigan this past season, but he was at Yale the 2 seasons prior to that. So he definitely is a smart guy, at least book smart, I guess you could say. But at the very least, I think that's a good quality to have. You'd think it would lend itself to learn playbooks quickly. And just because of Danny Wolf's size and shooting, he certainly seems like a guy that could be plug and played into a lots of different Heat lineups. And the Heat obviously need a backup big man. And if you can get a backup player at pick 20, I don't think that's all that bad. And he still has a lot of potential to be great one day. So he's kind of all the best of both worlds and a guy that I would love in Miami. The next prospect I want to look at is who Tankathon had the Miami Heat selecting number 20th overall, and that was Rasheer Fleming. Rasheer Fleming is 6'9", and he is 240 pounds, 20 years old, coming out of St. Joseph's. They have his player comps as Larry Nance and Brandon Bass. So a little bit of the old school game with Brandon Bass, who was a good mid-range shooter, and then Larry Nance, a guy who I think would have fit great on the Heat these last couple of seasons when he was healthy. Great rebounder, very athletic, can speed up the pace of a game, which is definitely something that the Heat need. They have his strengths as spot-up shooting, role player skills, and defense. I do know that he's a very switchable defender. He seems to be just a versatile player in general. The shot does concern me a little bit. If you look in college, he shot 39% from 3 on 4.5 attempts, which is great. But the year before that, he shot where's it at here? He shot 32% and 29% the year before that. So there has been constant progression every year, which is the positive, but just we haven't seen a big sample size of him shooting well. And if I'm just watching these highlights, sometimes his form looks great. It's a very quick release, which I love. Other times it looks a bit iffy, but if he is able to get that shot down, to have a versatile, athletic 6'9" defender that can also stretch the floor, that's obviously something that could fit in great for the Heat right away. And he averaged over 15 points per game in college. So you're talking about a guy that is an elite defender and can also score. Obviously something that the Heat could use very well. Looking at his concerns here, it has shot creation and touch. They do ask how real is his three-point shot. We kind of talked about that. But as far as the shot creation, that's not really a concern for me because you're looking at him as a guy to sort of be an improved version of Haywood Highsmith if you're the Miami Heat. You don't need him to shot create. You need him to lock down his man on the other end and hit the open three when he gets it, maybe make a play if he has a mismatch. You're not really looking at him to be the go-to guy. If you were, there's other guys in this draft for that. They might pay Tyler Hero a bunch of money with his extension. You don't need that from him. So if these are his true concerns, his touch and his shot creation, then that's not a bad prospect too much at all. Now moving on to who CBS Sports had us getting, and they had us getting a man by the name of Nolan Traore, who is a guy that could be that sort of playmaking hub, attack the basket guard that the Heat are desperately needing. Nolan Traore, played in some team in France, I believe. I think he's French. 6'3", 175 pounds. So not very big, but we should keep in mind that he is only 18 years old. His attributes, according to Yahoo, is ankle breaker, shot creator, downhill attacking. And when I was doing my research on him, he kind of seemed like a French version of Jeremiah Fierce, just to compare him to someone else in this class. He very likely won't be as good as Fierce, but I did see a lot of similarities there. And when you're looking at this Heat team, they don't have a point guard. You got Davion Mitchell, and his playmaking has been great, assist to turnover ratio wise, but they don't have a true facilitator. And Nolan Traore is someone that looks like he can be that. You see his player comps here are DeJounte Murray and Scoot Henderson, who are pretty decent two-way players, although Nolan, he doesn't seem to be a great defender at this point. He's a bit too small. But obviously, DeJounte Murray and Scoot Henderson are guys that provide some playmaking, and that's what the Heat need. I also think the Heat need someone that can just get to the basket, get dribble penetration to open up the entire offense, to maybe get a driving kick to an open Duncan Robinson or Tyler Hero, or even if Bam or Khalil Ware are spacing the floor, you need a guy who can get into the paint. And unfortunately, the only guy in the Heat that can do that consistently, well, Davion Mitchell does a little bit. But the other guy is Terry Rozier. But he sucks so much at everything else that he can't even play. And ideally, he's not on this team much longer. So from a fit standpoint, I certainly think Nolan Traore would be a great fit here. Yahoo has his strengths as speed, which obviously the Heat are one of the slowest paced teams in the league. That's one of the reasons that the Bulls ran us out of the building in the regular season. So he provides some speed, which we definitely need. They say he's the fastest player in this draft class with acceleration like a Bugatti. He's able to go coast to coast in a flash. When's the last time the Heat had someone like that? Goran Dragic? The Heat could definitely use someone like him. Shot creation, playmaking, shooting upside. He's making 75.6% of his free throws, even though it hasn't really translated to success on the floor. Because, his shooting numbers aren't that good. Looking at his stats, he was 28% from three this year, 25% from three last year, and in both seasons, he shot well under 40% from the field. So his efficiencies are not good at all. But what you want to remember about him is this right here. He's 18 years old, and he's literally playing against grown men in France, right, and overseas. So if he's able to get to the basket against grown men, athleticism, imagine what he could do in the NBA. And then obviously you give him some time to work with the Heat development staff to sort of work on his shot a little bit. And it's not like he's a terrible shooter. The form is fine. They just didn't fall for him. But it doesn't seem like something that would be impossible to really get his shot improved quickly. You want to compare it to a guy like Josh Giddey, who's playing overseas at a young age. His shot, he wasn't looked at as a shooter, but coming into the NBA, it took him a couple of seasons. And now you've seen with the Bulls this year, Josh Giddey shooting like 38%. If you can get Nolan Traore to be like a 37, 38% three-point shooter in the league, you definitely have a player that could be a great one, especially if he's able to get to the rim and play make as well as Nolan Traore does. Some concerns for him, says decision-making. He gets blinders when he drives to the rim, ends up forcing way too many tough shot attempts. I'm fine with that at 18. In theory, I don't want a shot chucker type of guy, but I don't really think that's what this is saying. I just think it says he needs to find a better balance between being aggressive and playmaking, right? And at 18 years old, that's obviously something he'll continue to learn with time. And also has shooting consistency, which we'll talk about. He's only making 30.6% of catch and shoot threes and 22.6% of dribble jumper threes. Those numbers aren't good, but trust me, his form isn't too bad. I do have some faith he can improve in that area. And then it does say defense is a weakness. He lacks focus, intensity, awareness, strength. I don't like the focus and intensity parts. I feel like no matter how small you are, you should always try in those areas. But as far as his awareness and strength, obviously those are both things that can improve with age. Even the team fit up here, because it has the Timberwolves picking, or they have him going 17 on Yahoo, and to the Timberwolves. It kind of compares him to Rob Dillingham as far as being a young guard that's not great at defense. I don't think Nolan's the same scorer that Dilly is, but you get the point. It's a guy that provides things that the Heat need. Now, the fit next to Tyler Hero defensively is also weird, but the Heat need a playmaker. This guy can do it. Moving on, let's go to who Sports Illustrated had the Miami Heat taken, and that's another guy we talked about in previous videos, Ben Saraf. a guy that I think also would be awesome here. He's a 6'5 guard from Israel, 200 pounds, 18 years old, so another very young prospect. They have his attributes as shot creator and crafty finisher. His player comparisons are D'Angelo Russell and Thomas Satoransky, but if you're watching his highlights, he is also an excellent playmaker, and he is a little bit bigger than Nolan Traore, so I kind of like that about him as well. But he's a guy that can run the offense. You see his strengths here, pick and roll playmaking. He is excellent at. And when the Heat, they have weapons like Bam and Khalil Ware who could jump through the roof, you need a guy who could set them up on the pick and roll. Ben Saraf is a guy that could do that. It also shows scoring craft and says he wears number 77, and it shows he watches a lot of Luka Doncic film. Low-key, some of his highlights when I was watching, I saw some Luka-esque moves, whether it was the step backs or getting to the rim. He does have good footwork, as it says right here, and those are all things that can that show signs of him being a crafty finisher at the next level. Because if he's scoring 12 points a game, it says here, on adults at 18 years old, that shows he has some skill to do so. And in the NBA, that's obviously something that he can build off of. And it also shows his potential size is a plus. They have him listed at 6'6" in this text here. So he has combo guard potential if his shooting off the catch continues to progress, making 37.5 of spot-up threes this season on low volume. Now, if you look at his actual stats here, it says he's only shooting 22% overall from three and 28% last year. So obviously those numbers aren't good at all. But the same thing we said about Josh Giddey earlier, these guys overseas are literally playing with grown men as children. They'll work on the shot. Regardless, this guy can definitely play make, and that's what the Heat need. His concerns say shooting, athleticism, defense. Very similar prospect to Nolan Traore, but I'm not going to go on and on about how he could fit on the Heat because for the same reasons I think Nolan could, I think Ben Saraf can as well. Although Yahoo actually has him going 27. But I've seen mocks where he goes as high as 15. So there is a lot of variance outside of like the top 6 or 7 on where a lot of these players can go. But let's go on to the last prospect, where this one is actually from Pro Football Sports Network. Obviously, we know Pro Football Network. I guess they talk sports in general, too. And this is a guy that looks like a Heat culture guy. His name is Carter Bryant, a 6'8" forward, 220 pounds, freshman out of Arizona. So he's still a young guy with a lot of potential. In general, I do prefer to go young, developmental guy in the draft just because I don't think the Heat are ready to win now. When they got Jaime Jaquez, I liked it. They needed a guy to win now. Now, you're a bit more in rebuilding mode. So just in general, I do like the idea that he was a freshman out of Arizona. We know the Heat like to go to the Arizona well because just last year, Keshad Johnson, Pelle Larsson, that's obviously a team that they heavily scout. And if you just look at his attributes and comparisons, you'll quickly see that he's a Heat culture guy. His comparisons are Jeff Green, Trevor Ariza, two of the most elite 3-and-D wings in their prime that pretty much every team covets. I know they've both been traded 100 times, but that's because every championship contender thinks that that mold is the type of guy they need that could really solidify their bench or starting lineup or help put them over the top. The attribute he has here is off-ball mover, which is something that would be perfect in the Heat as well, is because they have a guy like Tyler Hero who's going to be ball dominant. You have Bam Adebayo, who we know is a nice playmaking hub. You also want the ball in his hands. Of course, they still need a true point guard, as we've been saying. But if they get that guy, it'd be nice to bring in a Carter Bryant who doesn't need the ball to be effective. There's a lot of these other scorers in the draft that need the ball. Who knows how much that'll limit Tyler Hero or Bam. For example, we'll go back to Jaime Jaquez. He's most effective with the ball in his hands. And I think part of the reason he didn't have a great season is because they couldn't get the ball to him. You didn't have a true point guard that could facilitate him. And then you had Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo, pretty ball-dominant guys. Jaime Jaquez never really got his opportunity. That being said, Carter Bryant will find his opportunities. You see his strengths here, say cutting, which will allow him to get a lot of easy baskets. We see Kyle Anderson finding guys all over the place. Even Tyler Hero's playmaking has got better. You know, I understand, but we just said that he's taking a lot of shots, but we understand what's going on. He's working on his playmaking. It also shows spot-up shooting is a strength of his. Pulling up his stats here, you can see he was 37% from three on 2.8 attempts. But it says defensive upside. That's the main strength that I want to focus on here. He kind of reminds me of Ryan Dunn last year, the rookie of the Phoenix Suns, who had a pretty decent year for them. He's not the defender that Ryan Dunn is, but he does a lot of the similar things. He appears to be great in isolation. He appears to be versatile, switchy type of defender who obviously the Heats love. And at 6'8", he could probably guard maybe 1 through 4s. He really can. I do think he has that kind of lateral quickness to stick with a lot of backcourt players, and also the size and strength to match up against NBA 4s. He only averaged 6.4 points per game, but I don't really care about that, because if he was on the Heat, same thing that we said about Rasheer Fleming earlier, he's going to kind of be like hopefully an elevated version of Hayward Highsmith. You don't need the ball. Spot up in the corner, hit your shots, guard your yard. And that's what Carter Bryant can do. And for that reason, Yahoo actually has him going at 18, so a couple of picks above 20. But as far as his concerns, similar to Rasheer Fleming again, shot creation and shooting dynamicism. Don't care. If that's not going to be his role on the Heat, they're not going to look at him to create shots. So that, look, even shooting dynamism, I don't even know what that means. It says he's a solid shooter from a standstill, but doesn't hit threes moving off of movement or off the dribble yet. He's not going to be Duncan Robinson. That's not why the Heat are drafting him. They're drafting him to space the floor in the corner and hit an open shot. And if he's able to do that, then he's also a prospect that I desperately like for the Heat as well. So out of these 5 players, who do I like the most? I don't know. Honestly, it might be, I guess it's got to be Danny Wolf. I don't know. I've been talking about Danny Wolf a long time, but a lot of that is me just watching the highlights and saying, damn, that boy nice. When in reality, there's probably a lot of reasons that he has fallen to the late teens, early 20s. But really, I think all these are great players. I think the Heat need a playmaking guard and some size. So if they target one of those 2 things in the draft, I will certainly be happy. Or if they traded for Kevin Durant or Trae Young or Anthony Edwards or Giannis or whoever the hell else is available, I'll be happy with that too. That being said, let me know your thoughts down below. Which of these 5 prospects do you like the best? Which other prospects would you like me to cover in a video? All off season, I'll be doing tons of draft content. I'm sure all of these guys will get their own designated video at some point, as well as a ton of other players. But we're probably going to have a very long off season to do all of that. So make sure y'all subscribe so you don't miss it. Like the video, comment, all the support is greatly appreciated. And I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace out, everyone.
Look, pull up in your city trying to get that dead face. Do it on my own, I don't need no dead weight. Had to kill him off, yeah, I need a head space. You know this homegrown bitch don't offend me.